The planet below was burning. Ashes filled the atmosphere as explosions lit up the sky. It was the end, and the alien princess knew it. Her empire, once vast and proud, was falling into ruin. Her people were being slaughtered by a technologically superior faction from a neighboring galaxy. Ships, once shimmering with pride, now lay scattered across the surface of the planet, burning husks of their former glory. Her ship hovered silently in orbit above the chaos, hidden from the relentless enemy forces below. She watched helplessly as the last of her soldiers fell one by one. Each explosion on the surface was a devastating reminder of how quickly her world was crumbling. Her empire, the one she had been destined to rule, was no more. The beautiful cities, the lush landscapes, all reduced to rubble. The princess, though surrounded by the high-tech comforts of her ship, felt nothing but a deep emptiness. Her heart ached as she looked down at her people. She had failed them. The enemy had come with overwhelming force, their ships and weapons far superior to anything her people had. They were strong, technologically advanced beyond belief. There was no way for them to defend themselves, no way to win. As her gaze swept across the battlefield, her thoughts drifted back to the moments before all of this started. She remembered her father's warnings about the dangers lurking in the galaxy, the growing threats of enemies they had once considered beneath them. But it was too late now. The Empire had been too proud, too arrogant. They had underestimated the strength of the enemy. And now, the princess was left to watch as everything she had ever known was wiped from existence. Today, my empire is gone. My home, my people, everything, all gone. And this time, I can do nothing to stop it, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Her hands trembled as she wiped away the tears that had gathered in her eyes. It wasn't just the destruction of her people that hurt. It was the realization that she was powerless. The princess had always been strong, capable, and poised to lead her people into a bright future. But now her strength felt meaningless. She had no army left to command, no soldiers to rally, no hope to cling to. The devastation below was a reflection of her own brokenness. Her people had trusted her to protect them, but she had failed. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like a heavy stone, and she felt the tears threatening to spill over once again. She closed her eyes, trying to push away the grief, but it was impossible. Her world was shattering, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Suddenly, her ship shook violently, snapping her back to reality. The sensors blared with warnings. Her enemies had found her ship, and they were closing in. The princess's mind raced as she quickly assessed the situation. She couldn't stay in orbit any longer. The enemy would find her and destroy her ship. Her only chance was to escape. With a deep breath, she ordered the ship to power up. The escape pod, a small, sleek vessel, was her only hope. She had to get to it before it was too late. She moved swiftly, running through the corridors of the ship as alarms rang in her ears. Her mind raced, but there was no time for hesitation. The enemy was already targeting her ship. She reached the escape pod bay, her heart pounding in her chest. As the hatch opened, she felt a strange mix of relief and fear. The pod was small and cramped, but it was her only means of survival. She climbed in quickly, securing herself in the seat, and prepared for launch. Her hand shook as she activated the pod's thrusters, sending it hurtling into the vast emptiness of space. But as she shot away from the wreckage of her ship, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The enemy ships, vast and powerful, were not just attacking her ship. They were targeting the escape pods. She wasn't the only one trying to flee. The princess's mind raced. She had to survive. She had to get away. But the enemy would stop at nothing to find her. As her escape pod hurtled through the cold void of space, she glanced over her shoulder and saw the enemy fleet closing in. Their sleek ships, bristling with weapons, were like a pack of wolves hunting their prey. Her eyes filled with dread. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her chest, her breath quickening. Every second felt like an eternity. The enemies were closing in on her pod, and she knew she had no chance against their advanced technology. Her only hope was to get far enough away, to disappear into the depths of space where they couldn't find her. But as she glanced at the controls of her pod, her stomach dropped. The pod systems were failing. The energy reserves were low, and the life support systems were rapidly depleting. It wouldn't be long before she would run out of power, and when that happened, she would be lost. She gripped the controls tightly, trying to steady her breathing. Her eyes were fixed on the vast emptiness of space ahead, her only escape from the chaos below. The princess closed her eyes for a moment, wishing for a miracle. She didn't want to die like this, alone and helpless, drifting through space with no one to save her. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, a strange, flickering light appeared in the distance. At first, she thought it was a glitch, a trick of the light, but as it grew brighter, she realized it was something else. Something big. A ship. A human ship. The princess's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Had they come to save her? Her hand shook as she reached for the communication panel, hoping for some sign of life. She opened a channel, praying that someone would respond. But all she heard was static. Her pod was too far from the fleet to make a connection. The human ship, if it even existed, was still too far to reach. But that flickering light was getting closer. And just as her energy reserves ran dry, she felt the pod shake once more, this time from the impact of the human ship's tractor beam locking onto her. She was safe, for now. The escape pod drifted through the cold, empty void of space, its systems barely functioning. The princess's once bright future seemed like a distant memory, fading away with each passing moment. The life support system was failing. She could feel the temperature dropping, the oxygen thinning, and the darkness closing in around her. The pod's interior lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows across the cramped space. The princess closed her eyes, preparing herself for the inevitable. There was no escaping the grim reality. Her people were gone, her empire destroyed. And now she was nothing more than a drifting piece of debris in the vastness of space. She could already feel her strength waning as the lack of oxygen began to take its toll on her body. Every breath became harder to take, and soon she would lose consciousness. But then something strange happened. Just as the last flicker of hope began to fade from her heart, a sudden flash of light illuminated the darkness outside. The princess's eyes snapped open, and she blinked in disbelief. What was this? At first, she thought it was just a hallucination brought on by the lack of air. But no, this light was real. A ship. A human ship. It appeared from the darkness, its sleek silhouette cutting through the void like a beacon of salvation. The princess's heart skipped a beat as she realized what was happening. A human ship was heading straight for her, its engines humming with a strange, almost comforting sound. The pod shook lightly as the human ship's tractor beam locked onto her vessel, pulling it in slowly but steadily. Her fingers trembled as she pressed a button, trying to communicate, but her strength was failing her. The princess was beyond words. She had no idea why a human ship would come for her, but there was no time to question it. All she knew was that she was being saved. The next few moments were a blur. She was gently transferred from the pod to the human ship, where the interior was a stark contrast to the cold, lonely capsule she had just left behind. The ship's lighting was warm and comforting, the air crisp and full of life. The atmosphere was modern and sleek, with advanced gadgets and technology everywhere. Yet there was something uniquely human about it, something inviting, something that made her feel a small flicker of hope in the pit of her stomach. She was led into a large room, where she was greeted by a man. No, a captain. His features were strong, his eyes kind yet determined. The princess couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with confusion. She had never seen humans up close before. And now, standing before her, this man, this leader, seemed so different from the cold, calculating aliens she had known. "Are you all right?" the captain asked, his voice gentle but full of authority. His tone was warm, reassuring, like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. The princess blinked, unsure of how to respond. She had never encountered humans like this. They were so different, smaller, perhaps, and less technologically advanced than her race, but there was a depth to them, a warmth that made her feel a strange sense of safety. I come understand," she managed to say, her voice hoarse and weak. "Why are you helping me?" The captain smiled softly, understanding her confusion. "Because it's the right thing to do. You don't have to be alone anymore," he replied, his words carrying an unexpected weight of sincerity. "We're here to help. You're not lost. There's always hope, even in the darkest of times." The princess stared at him, her mind racing. She had heard of humans before, but never in this context. They were the underdogs of the galaxy, wild, unpredictable, and yet they had a resilience that few could match. Could it be true that they were offering her a second chance? As the captain's crew worked around her, adjusting the pod's damaged systems and providing her with much-needed medical attention, the princess began to understand something new. Despite their differences in technology and appearance, these humans were willing to risk their lives for hers. They had no reason to help her. She wasn't one of their kind, and yet they reached out to her in her moment of need. This wasn't just an act of mercy, it was something deeper. For the first time in what felt like forever, the princess began to believe in the possibility of survival. She had no idea where her journey would take her next, but one thing was clear. Humanity had given her something no one else had: the gift of hope. The moment the princess had thought she was safe, the shadows of her past quickly caught up with her. The human ship that had saved her was now under attack. She could feel the tension in the air as the crew scrambled to prepare for the oncoming threat. The faint hum of the ship's engines suddenly became drowned out by the loud, terrifying roar of enemy ships approaching from all directions. The alien faction, the same one that had devastated her empire, had found them. Their ships were massive, sleek, and menacing, their dark silhouettes cutting through the stars like harbingers of doom. They had been tracking the human ship since the moment they pulled the princess from the escape pod. This was no longer about a single princess. It was personal. They wanted revenge, and they had set their sights on the entire human fleet. The captain's voice cut through the chaos on the ship, calm but firm, giving orders as the crew rushed to their posts. "Brace yourselves. We're going to need everything we've got," he commanded. The princess, still shaken and weak, found herself gripped by the urgency of the moment. Her heart pounded in her chest as she watched the human soldiers prepare for battle. They were small in number compared to the attacking force, yet they were determined. The first explosion shook the ship violently. The lights flickered, and the walls of the ship groaned under the strain. The sound of gunfire and shouts echoed through the corridors as the humans manned their stations, returning fire. The enemy ships unleashed a powerful barrage of laser fire, their weapons streaking across the sky with deadly precision. The human ship shook again, throwing everyone off balance. It was then that the princess saw something that made her heart freeze. In the midst of the chaos, she caught sight of a soldier, Bonner, charging towards the ship's weapons deck. His face was grim, his body tense with the weight of what needed to be done. He moved with the kind of urgency that spoke volumes about the battle they were facing. Bonner reached the weapons station just in time to fire the ship's main guns at an incoming enemy vessel. The explosion from the blast lit up the void of space, a brilliant flash of light against the darkness. But as the ship erupted in flames, the alien ships retaliated with brutal force. One of their massive vessels fired a direct shot at the human ship, hitting it squarely in the side. The explosion rocked the ship, throwing Bonner across the room. The princess, who had been watching from a secure location, gasped as she saw Bonner's lifeless body hit the floor. Her heart sank. She had only just begun to understand the human way of life, their courage, their willingness to fight for what was right. And now one of them had paid the ultimate price. Bonner's death was a painful reminder of the brutal reality of war. The human soldiers didn't flinch. They carried on, their faces hardened with resolve, but their eyes betrayed the grief they were feeling. They had lost one of their own, but they were not about to give up. The captain, who had been coordinating the defense, looked over at the princess, his expression unreadable. "We don't stop," he said simply, and the message was clear. This was their fight, and they were not backing down. The battle raged on, and the princess couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and sorrow. She had never seen such bravery before. The humans fought not only for their survival, but for her as well. She realized, in that moment, that she had been saved by more than just the ship. She had been saved by the courage and selflessness of these people. Through the chaos, the sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, creating a cacophony of war. The human ship weaved through the attacking alien ships, dodging blasts and returning fire with precision. The ship's laser guns lit up the dark expanse of space, creating a dazzling array of colorful streaks. The crew worked together seamlessly, their focus unshaken despite the mounting losses. The princess looked out through the observation window, her eyes widening as the battle unfolded before her. The intensity of the fight was like nothing she had ever seen. The alien ships were ruthless, but the humans fought back with a ferocity born of desperation and determination. This was more than just a battle. It was a fight for survival. As the battle continued to rage, the princess found herself torn between fear and admiration. She had once been a ruler of an empire, and now she was witnessing the strength of these people who had been nothing but underdogs in the eyes of the galaxy. The humans weren't just defending their own lives. They were protecting the life of someone who was once their enemy. Through the explosion and flashing lights, the princess realized that Bonner's sacrifice had not been in vain. His death was a reminder of the price of survival and of the courage that it took to fight on. As the battle wore on, she began to understand what it truly meant to be human, to fight not for power, not for conquest, but for each other. But the battle was far from over. The alien faction, though suffering losses, was relentless. They were closing in, determined to finish what they had started. The princess could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her, but there was one thing she knew for certain now. She was not alone, and she would not let Bonner's sacrifice be in vain. As the human ship continued its fight, the princess steeled herself for what was to come. The stakes had never been higher, and the hunt had only just begun. The human ship was in ruins. Fires raged in its corridors, alarms blared relentlessly, and the hull was torn open in several places. It was barely holding together, but still, the crew fought on. The captain's voice, strained but steady, continued to issue orders as the crew worked frantically to keep the ship operational. The alien ships were closing in, their weapons prepared to deliver the final blow. The humans had fought bravely, but it seemed like they were on the verge of defeat. The princess, who had been watching the chaos unfold, was torn. She had been saved by these humans, and now they were fighting for her survival. But she was an alien, an outsider, and the reality was clear. If she didn't act, if she didn't do something, all of them would die. Her heart raced, and a deep uncertainty gnawed at her. Would they accept her help? Would they trust her after everything that had happened? She was no stranger to advanced technology. As the heir to a once mighty empire, she had grown up surrounded by the finest and most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Her people's technology was far beyond anything the humans had. She had the means to turn the tide, but using it would require her to risk everything: her life, her safety, and the trust of these humans who had just saved her life. Her mind raced, the choices weighing heavily on her. If I don't help them, everything will be lost. There will be nothing left for me to go back to. But will they trust me? She thought. The fear of rejection gnawed at her, but then a flash of clarity struck. Her people had fallen, her empire was no more, and all that was left was a chance to make a difference. She had to take the risk. Without hesitation, she strode toward the heart of the ship, where the human crew was working to repair the damage. The captain, who had been focused on the battle, looked up in surprise when he saw her approach. He had no idea what she was capable of, But he knew one thing. He didn't have many options left. His crew was dwindling, and the alien fleet was closing in. "Princess," he said, his voice filled with urgency, "we're almost out of time. What are you going to do?" With determination in her eyes, she stepped forward. "I can help you," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "I have the technology. It's the only way to turn this fight around." The captain hesitated for a moment, then nodded. The princess moved to the control panel, her glowing alien gauntlet flashing as she tapped the surface. A hum filled the air as the ship's systems powered up, responding to the advanced technology embedded in her gauntlet. Her people's technology was beyond anything the humans had, and she could feel its power pulsing through her, ready to be unleashed. She activated a cloaking device, a shimmering force field surrounding the ship. The human ship vanished from sight, rendering it nearly invisible to the enemy. The alien fleet, once so sure of their victory, was now left scrambling, unable to locate their target. The princess's technology had given the humans the edge they desperately needed. As the ship drifted in silence, hidden from the enemy sensors, the princess took a moment to breathe. The adrenaline that had coursed through her veins moments before now settled into a quiet focus. She had done it. The humans now had a fighting chance. But the battle wasn't over yet. "We have to strike back now, while they're disoriented," the captain said, his voice filled with newfound hope. "We've got one shot at this." The princess nodded, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She moved quickly, her gauntlet flashing with energy as she powered up the ship's weapons. The ship's cannons, once damaged and nearly useless, were now fully operational. She turned to the captain. "We fight together," she said. "You lead them, and I'll give you the firepower you need." With a nod, the captain commanded his crew to prepare for battle. The humans were ready to fight, their morale lifted by the princess's actions. She had given them a chance to win. Now, it was time for them to take it. The battle resumed, this time with the humans on the offensive. They unleashed a barrage of laser fire, their weapons glowing with intensity. The alien ships were caught off guard, struggling to adjust to the sudden shift in the fight. The humans, using the cover of the cloaking device, were able to strike from unexpected angles, taking out several of the alien ships before they could retaliate. The princess's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. She had never fought like this before. Her people had always been the conquerors, the ones who destroyed entire fleets with ease. But now she was fighting for survival, alongside the humans who had saved her life. For the first time, she felt a deep sense of connection to them. As the battle intensified, the princess and the captain exchanged a brief, knowing glance. They were in this together, and their bond had only deepened since their first meeting. There was an unspoken understanding between them now. No longer was she an outsider. She was part of this crew, part of this fight. The tide of the battle was turning. The cloaking device had given the humans the upper hand, and they fought with a renewed sense of purpose. The princess, standing beside the captain, fired the final blow that destroyed the last of the alien ships. As the battlefield quieted, the princess couldn't help but feel a rush of triumph. They had won, against all odds. She had helped them, and in doing so, had found something she hadn't realized she was missing: a sense of belonging. She had given her trust to the humans, and they had given theirs back. In that moment, as the last of the alien fleet was wiped from the stars, she knew one thing for certain. She had found a new family among the humans, and together, they had not just survived, they had won. The final battle had arrived. The princess and the captain stood side by side in the command center of the human ship, watching the screen as the alien fleet closed in for the kill. The enemy's leader, an eye-controlled being, had masterminded every move of the invasion, and now it was preparing for its final strike. Its ships were lined up, ready to wipe out humanity once and for all. The humans had given it their best, but the odds seemed stacked against them. The princess's heart pounded as she saw the vast fleet of alien warships, their weapons primed, their engines roaring toward them. The captain's voice broke through her thoughts, his words heavy with determination. If we don't win here, if we can't stop them, then our entire solar system is doomed. This is our last stand. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since their alliance, the princess saw the raw fear in them. It wasn't fear of death. It was the fear of losing everything. His crew, his world, his home. The weight of that fear settled heavily on her shoulders. She had already seen so much destruction, the death of her own people, the fall of her empire, and she knew what was at stake. She couldn't let this happen again. She had to help these humans. She had to prove to herself that she was more than just a princess of a fallen empire. She was a warrior, and in this fight, she had a chance to make a difference. The final assault began. The humans had barely enough firepower left to defend themselves, but with the princess's help, they were able to turn the tide. Using her advanced alien technology, the princess directed a devastating orbital bombardment. The energy weapons from the human ship fired upon the alien fleet, causing massive explosions to tear through the ranks of the enemy ships. Each strike was like a punch to the gut of the alien forces, their ships crumbling under the force of the humans' newfound power. The captain and the princess watched the destruction unfold, their hands gripping the control panels as they directed the bombardment. There was no turning back now. The alien fleet, once so mighty, was beginning to falter, its formation breaking apart as its ships tried to regroup. But the humans didn't let up. They struck again and again, pushing the enemy back with everything they had. It wasn't just the orbital bombardment that turned the tide, though. The humans had one more secret weapon: speed. With the cloaking device still active, the human ships moved undetected, weaving in and out of the alien fleet with precision. It was a high-speed dogfight, where every maneuver counted. The human pilots were skilled, their ships dodging incoming fire as they tore through the ranks of the alien fleet, taking down ship after ship. But the princess knew the final blow would come from her. The cloaking device had given the humans a fighting chance, but it was her alien technology that would give them victory. Her gauntlet glowed brightly, a weapon unlike anything the humans had ever seen. She activated it, her hand steady as the energy field expanded, firing a concentrated blast directly at the alien flagship. The blast struck with an intensity that shook the stars themselves. The alien flagship, the heart of the enemy fleet, erupted in flames, its massive hull cracking apart under the force of the blast. The AI-controlled leader of the alien faction, which had been controlling the battle from within the flagship, was now without a command center. The AI systems began to glitch, its control over the fleet faltering. Chaos erupted among the remaining alien ships. For a moment, the princess and the captain watched in disbelief as the last of the alien ships were picked off by the human forces. The alien fleet, once so proud and powerful, was now nothing but debris drifting through the cold vacuum of space. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had won. But the victory came at a price. The human ship was badly damaged, its systems barely holding together after the assault. The captain turned to the princess, his face grim but filled with gratitude. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We've saved our people. We've saved everything." The princess nodded, her eyes scanning the wreckage around them. "You did it. You fought with everything you had. I'm just glad I could help." The captain smiled, a weary but genuine smile. "You didn't just help. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us what true strength is." For the first time in a long while, the princess felt a sense of peace. The battle was over. The enemy had been defeated. And in that moment, she realized something important. She had found a new home, a new purpose. The humans had accepted her, trusted her, and fought beside her. She wasn't just an alien princess anymore. She was part of something greater, part of a family, part of a future. As the last remnants of the alien fleet drifted into the void, the princess and the captain stood side by side, staring out into the vast expanse of space. There was still much to be done, many challenges ahead, but for now, they had won. And that was enough. The battle was over. The once mighty alien fleet had been reduced to nothing but smoldering wreckage, drifting silently through space. The humans, battered but unbroken, had won. The princess, standing on the bridge of the human ship, looked out at the remains of the enemy's forces. Her heart was heavy with both sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the many lives lost, including those of her own people, and relief that the fight was finally over. The humans had done the impossible, defeating a technologically superior enemy, and in doing so, they had earned her respect. As the remaining human ships began to regroup and assess the damage, the princess felt a strange sense of admiration for them. She had never thought much of humanity before, viewing them as fragile beings caught in the vastness of space. But after witnessing their courage, their tenacity, and their unyielding spirit, she saw them in a new light. The humans were not weak. They were strong in ways she hadn't imagined. And now, in the aftermath of this great victory, she couldn't help but feel grateful to them, for saving her, for fighting alongside her, and for showing her a side of themselves she had never known. Aj tak ust nkabi nahi sokatha, ki uska sabs bada safi, humanity baniga. She thought to herself, the words echoing in her mind. She had come to Earth as a refugee, fleeing from the destruction of her empire, but now she realized she had found something far more precious, a new purpose, a new home, and new allies. She was no longer alone. The humans had become her family. As she walked to the captain's side, they exchanged a quiet look. There were no words needed. They had both witnessed the same horrors, fought in the same battles, and shared the same loss. But there was also an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forged in fire and blood. The captain turned to her, his eyes weary but filled with sincerity. "We couldn't have done it without you," he said softly. "You saved us. You saved everything." The princess smiled, though it was a bittersweet smile. "No," she replied, her voice steady. "You saved yourselves. I just showed you what you were capable of." Her gaze turned toward the stars outside the ship's viewport. "I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I first came here. But now, I'm proud to stand with you." The captain placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. "And we're proud to stand with you. You've earned your place among us." The princess nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She had come to this battle as an outsider, but she was leaving it as a hero. She had seen the humanity of these people, their courage, their selflessness, and their ability to fight for a better future. And now, as they looked toward the stars, she realized that her future was intertwined with theirs. The human fleet began to regroup, their damaged ships slowly repairing themselves, their crews working tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. The princess, no longer a mere refugee or alien, joined them in this effort. She worked side by side with the humans, her advanced technology helping to repair their ships, and her knowledge of the galaxy aiding in their efforts to understand the greater threats that still loomed out there. As the days passed and the rebuilding continued, the princess found herself growing closer to the humans, not just as an ally, but as a true member of their family. She shared in their joys and their sorrows, their victories and their losses. She fought beside them, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Her loyalty had shifted from her alien heritage to the humans who had welcomed her with open arms. She had found a new purpose in life, one that wasn't defined by the fall of her empire, but by the promise of a new beginning. One day, as the princess and the captain stood together on the bridge, watching the stars slowly pass by, she turned to him with a solemn expression. "You've shown me what it means to fight for something greater than yourself," she said, her voice quiet but filled with conviction. "I want to pledge my loyalty to humanity. I want to stand with you, to help protect this future we've built together." The captain smiled, his eyes filled with respect. "And we'll stand with you, princess. You're part of us now. The human fleet, once a motley collection of ships and fighters, was now a united force, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy had in store. The princess, no longer alone, had found her place among them. As they sailed through the vastness of space, they were no longer simply humans and aliens. They were a unified force, bound together by shared struggles and the hope of a better future. Together, they would face the unknown, standing side by side as they forged a new era. An era where differences no longer divided them, and where unity and strength would guide them through the challenges ahead. The dawn of a new era had begun, and the princess, no longer a stranger, was now a key part of that future, an unexpected hero in a galaxy on the brink of change.